anti-Semitic foreign leader is actively campaigning for somebody in the United States. And so our laws are pretty strict on these issues. What is unclear here is the extent to which Jeremy Corbyn is being compensated. He famously called Hamas and Hezbollah friends.
Yes.
And that is quite terrifying to Jews and others who live in New York, who lived through 9/11.
Three pillars of Zohran Mamdani that concern me greatly. One are his policies, two are his rhetoric, and three is his radicalized base.
In New York, socialist firebrand Zohran Mamdani is on the brink of power, with tomorrow's election expected to make him the next mayor of New York City. But should we judge a man by the company he keeps? A major foreign interference row has exploded, with Jeremy Corbyn, once Britain's Labour leader but kicked out for anti-Semitism. He's now actively campaigning for Mamdani with a paid-for calling campaign from the UK. As Texas Senator Ted Cruz put it, a British anti-Semite supporting a New York anti-Semite. Communists of the world, unite. Tonight, in DC, live with us is Harmeet Dhillon, the Assistant US Attorney General and the political editor of The Spectator, Tim Shipman. Assistant Attorney General, thank you for joining us. This isn't the first time this has happened in British and American relations, where a political party or a politician has intervened in a live election race. Can I get your response to that? You were tweeting about this last night, and it's caused quite a storm back in Britain.
Well, in the last few election cycles, in the federal elections we've had, there's been allegations of election interference, first to try to derail President Trump's 2016 campaign. Hillary Clinton famously planted a dossier and used a dossier. And then in the 2020 election, we had similar allegations that the Hunter Biden laptop was foreign interference. And, both of those claims were completely false, but I think they were actually less substantive than what we have here, which is an open admission that a foreign leader, an anti-Semitic foreign leader, is actively campaigning for somebody in the United States. And so our laws are pretty strict on these issues. They say that generally speaking, any foreign contributions are prohibited, and contributions can include all types of contributions. But what is unclear here is the extent to which Jeremy Corbyn is being compensated for his services. And as you mentioned to me, the advertisement, the flyer saying, "Come phone bank with Jeremy Corbyn," says paid for by the Mamdani campaign. Now that's, under our laws, probably making reference to the flyer being paid for. Yeah. The open question is, to what extent there's compensation being given to Mr. Corbyn, first-class flights, lavish entertainment, what have you. That might be illegal.
It's who's picking up the phone bill as well, because this is being coordinated from outside of the United States. You're going to have British political figures and presumably their supporters dialing in to phone up random New Yorkers and tell them how to vote.
Right.
We'll come back to Mr. Corbyn personally. In a moment, but where legally, what is the repercussions of that? Is it a matter of fines, or could this bring the whole integrity of Mamdani's likely election victory tomorrow into question?
Well, I think both of those could be true. Integrity would be a political question. Fines would certainly be something that could be levied by our federal officials if that occurs. There are already some questions about illegal contributions being made in that campaign. I think $13,000 worth or more than that. And so all of this usually shakes out months and years after the election. That's the problem, is that by the time the person is already elected, it's really a speed bump. It's a speeding ticket that they typically have to pay. People don't typically lose their ability to hold the position when they've committed massive campaign violations. In fact, Kamala Harris, as I pointed out on Tucker Carlson's podcast many years ago, last year actually, Kamala Harris got her start in elections by violating our election laws in California. She paid the fine, and she went on to become the vice president of the United States. So it didn't really hurt her career.
How does this leave Britain and America? I mean, President Trump has mentioned on a number of occasions in last year during his successful re-election campaign that he's upset that the Labour Party, who are the governing party in the United Kingdom, had essentially shipped hundreds of activists into swing states to try and influence the election, to try and get the vote out for Kamala Harris. A very angry response to that from the White House. When you read things like this, when you see British politicians trying to do this, how does that leave them with the administration? And has this been raised in Britain as unacceptable?
Well, to use a British phrase, it isn't cricket to do this.
Okay. Very good.
And so it does impair our great relationship between the two two countries. And then you add fuel to the fire. I mean, I'm in charge among my many jobs in the DOJ of anti-Semitism in our country. And I think it's kind of a disgraced foreign leader on top of that, who has actually been disciplined by his own party, suspended for 3 weeks in 2020.
And then expelled. Now he's been expelled from Labour. He's now an independent, and he's forming a new movement.
His own, like, Hamas, whatever. I mean, he famously called Hamas and Hezbollah friends.
Yes.
And that is quite terrifying to Jews and others who live in New York, who lived through 9/11. And so I'm not sure how these folks thought that through, but that imagery is quite disturbing for Americans.
On that point, Tim Shipman, you've got the scars on your back, as I have, of covering Jeremy Corbyn for the better part of a decade. Not the most helpful endorsement, is it, when you're trying to say to New Yorkers that you're not an extremist, you're not a crazy communist, and you're not a sort of terrorist sympathiser, you bring in the crazy communist terrorist sympathiser. I mean, it's kind of mad, right?
Well, I'm one of those guys who's got in his DMs messages from Jeremy Corbyn threatening to sue me for calling him anti-Semitic. So I'm still waiting for the writ, to be perfectly honest. I mean, these things are always hilarious. The British left always screams blue murder if they think the Russians are trying to influence an election, but they love trying to do it themselves. You've mentioned what happened with Kamala Harris. We're now seeing this with Jeremy Corbyn. I remember back when the Guardian newspaper was whipping up its readers to phone people in swing states to say, will you please elect Barack Obama? I mean, if I was...
The letter-writing campaign in Ohio, I think that was against George Bush. I mean, that's going into the deep
If I was a
memories.
New York voter and I got a call from Jeremy Corbyn, I think I would pretty much rush out and vote for Andrew Cuomo just as a statement of intent, to be honest. It
doesn't bode well for New Yorkers and the Mamdani's sort of sense of judgment, Assistant Attorney General, does it? In the fact that this guy is, as you said, completely disgraced. Do you think, obviously, it's drawn a lot of attention overnight. You were quick to flag this as potential foreign interference. How do you think it's going to land with New Yorkers?
Well, look, I think New Yorkers are really in a tough spot. It looks like there are enough dumb, young, poorly educated people who are willing to go for somebody with the inflammatory views, in question. And we try to stay away from partisan politics in the DOJ, but it does concern me as an American, a former New Yorker. I lived in New York for many years. I started my legal career there. And so I think New York is in for a world of hurt coming up in this election.
It does strike me as a slightly, it's not exactly a great offering for New York, because a disgraced former governor who got a lot wrong in COVID, people argue, and then had to resign in disgrace. And then obviously Mamdani, and then, if the Republican candidate had pulled out, perhaps there could have been a way of stopping him.
Yeah, like I said, we're trying to stay away from the partisan aspects of this. But I will say that we have a history recently with this foreign interference stuff, and it is resented by Americans. So
one of the things that strikes me as a relative newbie in this country is some of the revelations we've been hearing are not even foreign interference, but domestic interference in elections and domestic interference in politics. The Arctic Frost investigation that we are now learning from a series of whistleblowers and the House Oversight Committee, hundreds of subpoenas, requested for phone records, for bank records, not just for politicians, which in itself is, a disgrace, but for journalists, for activists, for lawyers.
My law firm represented the president and represented the Republican National Committee, and is throughout these papers. So
how is it not a bigger story? It kind of baffles me.
To use an analogy here, it is the tip of the iceberg, what we've just found out so far. I do think that a lot of rights have been violated. The United States Department of Justice is likely to be involved in this, and I'm also in charge of civil rights conspiracies at the Department of Justice, so I won't say more. But the allegations and the names and the extent, it disturbs me that American DOJ lawyers, fully educated, supposedly the top of their profession, knowing the importance of civil rights, the First Amendment, the legislative privileges in this country of the United States senators whose records were subpoenaed, willingly went along with this. It is really shocking to me.
I think it fell to AT&T or Verizon to turn around to the FBI and say, hang on, no, you can't have Senator Cruz's phone records.
That is because a federal judge banned those telecommunications providers from disclosing that information in a timely manner, which itself requires a showing to the court, which this court rubber stamped, that these senators were likely to somehow evade the production of their data, that they were dangerous. This is really, I mean, Ted Cruz, a noted lawyer, has been mentioned for the Supreme Court, to accuse him of, or Marsha Blackburn, to accuse these paragons of American privilege and society of presumption that they're going to destroy evidence is shocking and outrageous. And so heads need to roll, in my opinion, for this to never be repeated again in America. But again, we haven't even begun to touch the surface of the details.
I know you're slightly restricted in what you can say, but the House Oversight Committee are pushing for the DOJ to get involved in this. Here's the evidence. Now let's chase it. Is that your understanding? Will this be taken further? Can you likely see and be seeking prosecutions?
I would just say stay tuned. I can't speak on behalf of what we might do.
All right, let's go to New York. Thank you. Let's go to Tim. Sorry. In terms of the Arctic Frost investigation, people are saying this is bigger than Watergate. It isn't getting the coverage I don't think it deserves. Can you imagine if it had been the other way around? If it had been the Trump White House and the Trump DOJ spying on Biden administration officials and Democratic senators? The hypocrisy of this is off the scale, right?
Yeah, I mean, welcome to politics. I mean, it's kind of,
I know, but it does strike me that we are slightly through the looking glass now, and that it seems that this pendulum swings back. Whoever's in power then spends the next 3 years, sort of dredging up this stuff, trying to lock each other up. But it's not very American in my view.
Yeah, this is happening here, but then you look back at home in London, and the very things that the Labour Party once criticised the Conservative Party for doing, they seem to be doing quite a lot of it themselves, and hypocrisy is a pretty regular theme in politics. But you can well imagine how the left would scream blue murder if this was being done to them.
That's a fair point. I mean, how are you guys going to bring this story to the prominence it deserves, given you seem to be up against pretty much every single major network who barely even mention it?
Well, every single major news cycle, too. We have an election coming up. We have a lot of news there. We have the president with his foreign trip and so many things happening. But our legal system works a little more slowly than the news cycles. And so I think people need to wait for us to get the evidence and catch up. We don't simply go out and arrest people overnight here in our country. We do our investigations. We submit our evidence. We have to have grand juries. If there's a criminal investigation, we have to get records. And so also on a separate track, I think there will be, probably cycles and cycles of this playing out in the news cycles, because there will be investigations over the next year initiated by the legislature themselves who were spied upon about this. And so I think there will be plenty of time to air this out and get to the bottom of it.
The age of lawfare doesn't seem to be going away. Mike Davis, a very pugnacious Republican.
Saw him earlier today. Good
friend of the show. Pugnacious attorney says, look, two wrongs don't make a right, but it does make it even. I mean, is that now the mantra we're going to be in? Because say the Republicans lose the House in 2026, and then they're going to try and prosecute President Trump again. There'll be impeachment processes. The committees will flip and start investigating. Is there a point, or are we sort of past the point of no return now, where everyone can just sort of say, guys, let's do this at the ballot box rather than in the courtroom?
Yeah, I mean, the era of civility between the parties, which I think underpins some quaint practices like the blue slip process that Senator Grassley loves so much, that Mike used to work for him. I think that's a bygone era. It really went away during the Obama administration, and people are at each other's throats now. There's very little cooperation. John Fetterman is the only Democrat senator who is, calling for the government to be reopened so that people can have their food and not pay astronomical Affordable Care Act premiums and so forth. So that we are the Department of Justice, however, not the Department of Getting Even. So
very good.
We will see how that goes.
President Obama was out and about not long ago. Last week, I think it was, making a similar sort of point to me of going, can we step back a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Should he? Yeah, exactly. Should he be worried?
No, I mean, I won't say he should be worried or not, but I will say it would be nice if we had more civility and predictability. It is not tenable for a society to constantly be. I mean, I hearken back when President Trump got indicted multiple times. It was really shocking to the conscience. It's the kind of thing you see in, Pakistan,
Banana Republics, or France.
You don't see it in France. You don't see it in, fully baked, well-functioning countries. We saw it in our country, and so it should never be repeated, in my opinion. That said, where lawyers perhaps judges, certainly, political operatives have violated the federal civil rights of American citizens. They should be held accountable for that.
Do you really think FBI agents that were sort of shaking down conservative activists who train Hill staffers in process and dragging them into this giant conspiracy that they're somehow involved in an insurrection that you could draw a line from Trump Tower down to the down to the grassroots of the party? Surely they didn't actually buy any of this stuff, right? It was a fishing trip.
Well, look, again, we're talking about stuff that that is under investigation, and so we have to let that play out in the process. But the Department of Justice, my department, does indict law enforcement officials who violate people's federal civil rights. We do that at the state level. But when this happens at the federal level, there can be criminal conspiracy statutes brought to bear. I'm sure you've discussed these with Mike. And, I know I met with my boss earlier today, the Attorney General, and there's just a lot of stuff cooking right now we can't really talk about until it becomes public.
Excellent. We'll come back and see us when it is ready to cook. Stay there, guys. We're going to talk to Brandon Straka, founder of the Walk Away campaign, who's in the front line of the communist collapse of New York tonight. Good evening, Mr. Straka. How are you? Looks like it's game on for Comrade Mamdani, right?
It's been a hell of a fight. I've been in this now for about 5 months here in New York City, building what I believe to be the largest anti-Mamdani ground game to fight the socialist insurgency takeover of New York City. And tomorrow's the big day where the culmination of all the work that we've been doing here in New York City.
Are you confident it's going to be enough, though? I mean, he's looking pretty happy out and about campaigning this afternoon across New York. Looks like he's got this, isn't it?
Well, like I said, this has been an uphill battle from the beginning, and I didn't get involved because I thought it would be an easy fight. I thought it would be a really difficult fight, and it has been. But let me tell you, as I'm a former Democrat who walked away from the Democratic Party, and I joined the Republican Party about 7.5 to 8 years ago. And, I believe in fighting the radical left and not running away from a hard fight. So are the odds stacked against us? Of course they are. But let me tell you, there's some really encouraging signs that we're seeing here in New York City. One of them is early voting began on October 25th. That's last week. Early voting numbers are massively up, like 500% in certain boroughs. At this point, more than 735,000 people have come out to early vote. Now, in 2021, at this time, that was 169,000 people. And early polling is showing that the majority of those people who are coming out to early vote are over the age of 55. That's not Mamdani's base. So there are good signs right now that we're seeing a massive turnout in voting, unlike any other election. And it's possible a lot of these people are not coming out to vote for Mamdani.
So you're suggesting what you're seeing in the data is this narrative of young, dumb, kind of left-wing kids, rich kids, and coming out to, sort of vote like a turkey for Christmas. That's wrong. And actually, there's a backlash against Mamdani.
Well, it's possible. I mean, look, so I think people got really freaked out because there was this upset in the primary where no one expected this guy to do so well and no one expected him to win. But the thing is, in our primaries here in New York City, we have this very stupid thing called ranked choice voting, which I won't get into because it's so complicated. We would need 3 hours to get through it, so I won't bore your audience. But we don't have ranked choice voting for our general election tomorrow. It's winner take all. So he was able to slide through in the primary, and he only got 430,000 votes or 460,000 votes in that primary. Typically, the winner of the New York City mayoral election needs to get about 780,000 votes to win. Now, that's in a normal election where we have normal numbers. Right now, we're seeing a 500% surge in voter turnout in this election. And I don't believe that the majority of those registered voters are going to come out and support this radical leftist, Marxist, socialist insurgency in New York City. I think people are going to come out and save New York City by voting. So, yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm going to stay optimistic.
Well, come back and see us again when we know the result tomorrow night. Just before you go, Brandon, can I get your response to the former Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who was kicked out of his own party for anti-Semitism, a man who called Hamas and Hezbollah his friends and has a long track history of palling around with terrorists, has been running a phone banking campaign for Mamdani from London. The legality and ethics of that aside, can I get your response to judging a man by the company he keeps?
Right. Well, very quickly, I'll say there's three pillars of Zohran Mamdani that concern me greatly. One are his policies, two are his rhetoric, and three is his radicalized base. So what I don't want to do is give the largest pulpit in New York City to a man who encourages a radical left violence, anarchy, and obviously rubs elbows with terrorists. Let's not make this choice tomorrow. Let's defeat Zohran Mamdani.
Brandon Stracker in New York, thank you for joining us. Best of luck.
Thank you.
He seems quite optimistic, Tim. I mean, it's it might not be doomsday just yet.
Well, this is an example of left populism, and there may be a parallel with the right populism at home. We had a by-election recently in Britain where it looked like the Reform Party were going to win it, and a lot of people turned out to stop that happening, whatever the rights and wrongs of that. On that occasion, it was a left-wing coalition against a populist right candidate. It looks here like you might be getting a lot of moderate New Yorkers turning out to try and back a radical left candidate. Populist candidates on left and right have done very well in recent years, but it looks a little bit like they then set themselves up as someone to shoot at. And in this case, that may be what's happening with Mamdani. I mean, Stracker's right. The type of people who are turning out are older by the looks of it, and
so it made a lot of noise, but perhaps under the surface, and
that's often the way with radicalism.
Yeah.
The youth go for it, and then they make a lot of fuss, and then they don't necessarily always turn out in the numbers that they say they're going to.
That's right. Sometimes they're too disorganised to make it to the polls.
The left being disorganised. Who would ever have it? Harmeet, I know you need to. I know you don't want to stray too far into politics, but while you are here, obviously a major story in the United Kingdom and the United States, and we're going to be discussing this after the break with Tim. Before you go, can I just get your response to the disgrace of Prince Andrew, not least given that it seems to me that the Epstein files and the Epstein saga only really seems to be sort of dragging in Brits at the moment. It seems to be, well, the artist, the Andrew formerly known as Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, an all but commoner by name, lost his titles, lost his home, lost his reputation. Arguably should have happened maybe a long time ago. Ghislaine Maxwell, a Brit, is the only person that seems to be jailed so far of this, beyond Epstein, who obviously didn't last long in prison. Won't ask you to comment on that. And Peter Mandelson, now former ambassador, packed off back to London after further relations from the Epstein files that have been handed over to Congress have come out. Is there more to come? Should Andrew, would you like to see Prince Andrew Mountbatten testify to Congress or help with your investigation?
Look, we don't have kings in our country, so I'm not going to.
249 years. We can let it go.
I'm not going to express an opinion about that. I mean, I would say we have our big holiday of Thanksgiving coming up, and I would say Thanksgiving will be awkward in the royal family this year if you were doing Thanksgiving, given the statement that the king made. Sex scandals are very common in your country. That's something that we do see in the headlines quite a bit. It's tragic for the victims of Epstein. I will just leave it at that. And I'm sure for the families, I saw some statements from the families to see accountability. I think is maybe some closure for them. That's all I will say.
Do you envisage a world, without revealing too much operational detail, of this not being the end of the legal road for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and he could potentially still be prosecuted in the United States?
I don't do the criminal side in the DOJ other than civil rights violations, and so it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that. All right.
Well, listen, in 20 seconds before you go, one final message back to London for anyone thinking about interfering in US elections.
Don't do it. You will not be welcome.
All right, then.